me this is your sister?
Yeah, and she's doing my mom with a knife. What do you please tell me?
She's doing what to your mom with the knife? You need to take a deep breath for me so I can understand you.
No, I did. I'm going to tell you. My mom did it, please.
And what is going on there?
I don't know. I just woke up.
Okay, who am I talking to now?
Her daughter.
Okay, and what's going on there? Who has the knife?
My sister.
Okay, does she still have it?
Mom? Okay. What happened?
What's going on? Hold on.
Megan was the teenager who made the 911 call, and she was the one who witnessed this terrible scene in which Sabrina, her sister, took the life of her mother, Lisa Kniefel, in the cruelest way possible. The victim was a 41-year-old woman, an employee of the Department of Child and Family Services in the area of child abuse and neglect. At the time of the terrible event, Lisa was alone with her 3 daughters, while her husband, Kevin, was working and traveling from Michigan to Ohio. When police arrived and discovered the grisly scene, they found Sabrina in a state of shock, holding a 40-centimeter knife in her hand. While Haley, Lisa's youngest daughter with only 3 years old, was hiding in a closet terrified by what had happened. The police arrested and took Sabrina to the hospital to treat the wounds on her hands, as the victim would have managed to defend herself at some point from her daughter. However, the autopsy would reveal that Lisa was attacked 178 times all over her body. 10 hours after the crime, Sabrina is released from the hospital to give her statement at the police station. She has not revealed anything about what had happened until now.
What do you recall?
From yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Getting done with my homework? Going, I don't know, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Going to bed.
And we were at home?
Mm-hmm.
What, anything unusual happen?
I don't know.
Sabrina acts confused, as if the bandages on her hands aren't evidence of having been involved in a brutal act. The detectives are waiting for Sabrina to admit the facts and reveal her motivations for committing this crime against her own mother, since it was them who found her at home with in her hand, covered with incriminating stains. Sabrina Zunich was born on October 27, 1994 in Cleveland, Ohio. Her biological parents had substance and problems, and her father died of an overdose. It was for this reason that Sabrina was raised by her grandmother from a very young age. During her adolescence, she was a troubled and rebellious girl who was constantly involved in fights. For this reason, at the age of 14, her grandmother was no longer able to care for her, and she was sent to a social services foster home with the intention of modifying her troubled behavior. In July 2011, when Sabrina was 16, she was adopted and welcomed with open arms by her new foster family. Her foster parents were Lisa and Kevin Kniefel.
How do you get along with Kevin?
Kevin's a miracle. I mean, he's more the one that helps me out, because this has Megan to deal with, and so we made agreements a long time ago that if I need anything, that I can go to Kevin.
How about with Lisa? How do you get along with her?
Me and Lisa's never been the best. She's never seemed to like me, and she's been wanting me out of the house.
Sabrina started to have friction with her foster mother because Lisa didn't like her friendships, since she consumed substances and alcohol with them, so Lisa constantly tried to discipline her. On the other hand, Sabrina also had a bad relationship with Megan, who was 13 years old at the time. Sabrina would berate them because neither of them were supportive. She felt that Lisa was always on her biological daughter's side, and that, like a good teenager, infuriated her. Sabrina continues the interview giving vague answers. She is evasive and responds as if she has no idea what happened. The detectives will now be much more direct, and Sabrina will no longer have the option to avoid reacting to what happened.
What's your thoughts on how Lisa is not alive now?
What?
you had a knife and you stabbed Lisa.
I did.
Yes, you did. And Megan called the police.
That can't be true.
Bree, it is. I'm sorry.
This is really dead.
Denise is dead. Sorry.
I don't believe this. Nobody else is hurt.
Nobody else was hurt. Thank goodness.
During this interrogation, Sabrina never denied committing the crime, nor did she give the detectives any more information about what happened, so they decided to apply for a search warrant for the phones at the crime scene. They hoped to find any clues that might lead them to Sabrina's motivations. And they found it. Sabrina's phone revealed something shocking. Over the past 2 weeks, Sabrina and Kevin Kniefel, Lisa's husband, had texted each other more than 1,000 times, which immediately caught the detectives' attention, as this wasn't a normal occurrence due to Kevin's role as a foster father. Kevin Kniefel was a truck driver who frequently traveled the country. Lisa met him and then got married in 2006, with a child from her previous marriage. In 2008, Lisa and Kevin decided to move into a new home with Megan, and a year later, in 2009, they had their baby girl. It should be recalled that Kevin was not at home at the time of the crime. He had left his house at around 8 p.m., hours before the macabre event, and returned when he learned of his wife's. The detectives wanted to question him, to which he agreed in the company of his lawyer.
Kevin, do you know anything that was happening at the house the night before you left for work that night?
Well, hang on a second. We just talking about his wife's work. What's going on at the house the night before is not his wife's work.
Were you and Lisa in the process of going through a divorce?
Okay, now we're getting outside the scope.
Kevin's attitude to the detectives was not that of someone who had just lost his wife. Kniefel looked away, looked down at the ground, didn't feel grief or anger. That was more than enough to make him suspicious. Kevin isn't cooperating with the investigation, which sets off alarm bells for the detectives, since any husband in his place would want to understand what happened to his wife. However, his lack of sensitivity is telling too much. What is Kevin hiding from the police? Until here, the story of the crime against Lisa Kniefel remains unsolved, but after 6 months, a major discovery occurs. While Sabrina is still in custody, she agrees to talk to the prosecutor on the case about the details of the whole story and be 100% honest with the promise of a reduced sentence. This revelation you're about to hear cannot be used against her at trial.
What we believe from conversations is that what led up to this homicide, to this murder, is that there was another party involved in planning that.
Yes. Was Kevin Kniefel my foster father? It was Kevin's idea, and it was talked about after we were having sexual relations, and him and Lisa were having problems in marriage. He wanted to get a divorce, but Haley, which is a 3-year-old daughter of his and her, was in the picture, and he wanted full custody. She would get custody, or it would be shared, and he didn't want that happening. So the alternative was for this to happen.
When was it, after you started to live there on a daily basis, that your relationship with Kevin changed? When did the sexual nature start to change?
It all started not with sex, but with massages, because he was a truck driver and his legs would cramp, so it was inner thigh. Then it progressively got into sex.
Does he ever tell you, hey, you can't tell anybody about this?
All the time.
Did he say what would happen if you told?
Then you'd be taken out of my care and I could lose my foster parent license.
What did you say in response to that?
I would never do that.
As Sabrina and Kevin's relationship grew closer and closer in the wrong way, Lisa Kniefel noticed that something strange was going on between them. This is when they established a pact. Kevin convinced Sabrina to kill his wife, created a plan, and even told her with which weapon she should attack Lisa. Kevin promised her that if she was caught, she wouldn't be incarcerated for more than 5 years, that he would protect her, and that, as soon as she was released, they would be together, they would buy a house, and that she would be a foster mother for Haley. However, all his promises fell apart.
So have you talked to him since
No.
then?
Nada, no money on my books, no letters, no calls, no nothing.
Thanks to Sabrina's statements, the police determined that Kevin had been the mastermind of the cruel crime. It was all calculated by him, and he used Sabrina, who was a minor at the time, to execute this plan to eliminate his wife, and thus collect Lisa's life insurance, which at the time amounted to $750,000. Days after the crime, Kevin collected the money. We don't know if it was given to him immediately. However, he had already started buying cars, houses, and even paid for flying lessons.
What was his relationship to you?
It was when a foster father when needed to be, and when a lover when not being a foster father.
Can you describe for us or give us an idea of exactly the statements that Mr. Knievel made to you about his wife being gone?
She would be worth more dead than alive.
Kevin found Sabrina to be a perfect victimizer because the family conditions in which she grew up were a determining factor in understanding why she would be capable of committing a crime like this. Sabrina never had a stable family, a home where there was love, a sense of security, or belonging, and Kevin knew all too well this extreme vulnerability. In Sabrina's words,
I didn't know how to deal with abandonment and everything that I went through because of my parents.
18 months after the crime against Lisa, the trial began against Kevin Knievel for conspiring to end his own wife's life. The verdict was decided rather quickly. There was no doubt about what Sabrina had testified to, and Knievel's lack of emotion was crucial.
Yes, and there are two girls that go through pain every day because of him. And I hope, Judge, that you will give him the maximum sentence. Because my daughter's sister think about their mother every day. And I sure hope that you think about what you did in jail. And I hope you rot in jail the rest of your life.
Sabrina was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 30 years, and Kevin was sentenced on 11 counts and to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 30 years in prison. Kevin Knievel was also sentenced to 12 years in prison for engaging in improper acts with a minor. Lisa left this world believing Sabrina was solely to blame for her fatal end, never suspecting that her own husband was behind this macabre plot against her.